Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we're looking at the 2026 governor's elections map and going through each state that has a poll conducted and looking at the latest poll and assigning the state based on that. So there are about 10 states on the governor map that have polls conducted for candidates in the race that are currently running. Now there are 26 states that have not had any polls conducted in their respective states or with the candidates in the race that are running, and I went ahead and assigned them the current prediction rankings that I have for the states. So some competitive states like Wisconsin and Georgia, both of which are expected to be two of the closest governor states in the country in 2026, have not had any polling data conducted yet. And my current rankings for these races are Wisconsin as tilt for the Democrats and Georgia as tilt for the Republicans. So I went away and did that. Now onto the states that have had polling been done thus far. First, we're going to start with the state of Massachusetts, as this one's pretty easy. For Maura Healey in the general election versus one of the Republicans, it's going to be an absolute Democratic blowout, not really too much of a surprise. Massachusetts starts out as safe for the Democrats. Now, in neighboring Connecticut, it's a little bit more interesting, because Connecticut does have some history of having more competitive governor's races, but at the same time, the only poll is from a candidate that's expressed interest from Aaron Stewart, and it's about an 8-point lead. Now, it is also an internal poll, and normally for internal polls, I shifted about 5 points towards the other candidate's direction, as overestimating candidates of the poll, usually by about 5 points. So even still, the 8-point lead goes to about 13 points or so. So that would make Connecticut go into the likely Democratic category based on that. Now we can go to the state of New York with Democratic Governor Kathy Hochul and looking like Republican Elise Stefanik in this race. I don't believe Stefanik has officially entered, but it's looking like she probably will. And the polling thus far shows Hochul versus Stefanik being a pretty big Democratic win. The most recent poll from Siena College shows Hochul already breaking 50% and Stefanik at 27%, still with 17% undecided. Based on the way New York elections have historically gone, I expect Stefanik to get a large amount of those undecided votes, but still based on those most recent numbers, that would move New York into the safe Democratic category for Kathy Hochul. Now we can look at the state of Michigan. Michigan's going to be a very interesting race, as this is open now that Gretchen Whitmer is term limited and cannot run for a third term. And independent mayor of Detroit, Mike Duggan, is running as an independent candidate, which is going to make it very competitive as well. Jocelyn Benson is going to be the likely Democratic candidate at this current point in time. And on the Republican side, U.S. Representative John James is currently the leader on that. So the general election is completely up for grabs right now. The most recent poll shows about a 1-point lead for Benson over James over Duggan. And when it goes to definite voters, it goes up to 5 points, but we're going with the likely voters on this one. So Michigan's governor's race in the most recent poll starts out in the tilt category for the Democrats in the state of Michigan. Now moving a little bit south to the state of Ohio. Ohio, Republican Vivek Ramaswamy is the leading candidate to be governor on the Republican side. All of his other Republican opponents have currently dropped out of the race, including Heather Hill and Dave Yost. Hill now running as an independent. On the Democratic side, right now the Democrat is running is Amy Acton, with former U.S. Representative Tim Ryan expressing interest, and announcements should be pending in the next few weeks or so. So what happens in this race? Well, right now the early polling from Emerson College shows a 10-point lead for Vivek Ramaswamy over Amy Acton in this race, with 12% undecided. Now, similar to New York, I expect a lot of those undecideds will go for Amy Acton based on how Democrats have historically performed in the state of Ohio, but still a 10-point lead for Vivek in a nonpartisan poll would put Ohio into the likely Republican category. Now we can go to the state of Tennessee. This is going to be an open governor's race, but Republican U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn is running and will probably win the GOP primary. And for the Democrats, based on whether it's Jerry Green or Marsha Blackburn versus Jerry Green or John Rose versus Jerry Green, it's going to be a safe over 15-point Republican win in both scenarios. So unsurprisingly, Tennessee, based on the most recent polling, goes in safe for the Democrats. Now, Florida is actually a little bit more interesting. Florida, we've known it to become a very safe Republican state in recent election years. However, the Republican primary, Byron Donalds is currently the leader to be the GOP nominee. On the Democratic primary, only former Republican David Jolly is currently running in this race. And it's also worth noting the only polling done thus far for Donalds versus Jolly, the most recent poll has Jolly leading over Donalds by 1 point. Now, this is an internal poll, And again, my rule of thumb for internal polls is shifted 5 points in the opposite direction, as I do believe internal polls overvalue the person's candidate by about 5 points on average. So doing this, though, would make it a lean Republican win for Donalds over David Jolly. And the AIF poll from back in August, which is a Republican-aligned poll, has Donalds up by about 8. So again, shifting that one 5 points towards the Democratic side would be about a 3-point lead. So in both cases, the governor's race for Florida right now, based on the polling, shows about a lean Republican win. Now, I expect it will be a much larger Republican win come November of 2026, but for right now, Florida starts out on the polling side of things in lean Republican. Now we're going to go to the state of Alaska. Alaska, this is a Republican governor, Mike Dunleavy. He is term limited, and this race could get very interesting depending on what happens on the Democratic side. Former minority leader of the Alaska Senate and uncle of U.S. Representative Nick Begich, Tom Begich, is declared running in this race. Former U.S. Representative Mary Peltola, still listed as a potential Democratic candidate. Now for the polling thus far, it's a little bit up and all over the place, but it shows that Peltola in this matchup starts out with an early lead and will be likely favored to win in this race. Now for the head-to-head matchups of Begich versus Peltola, be about a tied race with Nick Begich, the Republican representative. Dahlstrom versus Peltola, about a 10-point lead. But again, this is also data for progress, a Democratic poll. So this poll has been conducted, but with Peltola not currently in the race, we really don't have too much to go off of. And the ratings are a little bit over the place. Solid for the GOP, likely for the GOP, and Rachel White House has it as a toss-up. Now for Begich at this point, doesn't have him advancing to the general except for one matchup versus Nancy Dahlstrom, which shows about a 12-point lead over Begich and Dahlstrom in that scenario. So based on that, as Peltola is not currently in the race, Alaska goes into the likely Republican category. I just wanted to show you where that poll number would be coming from. If Peltola did decide to run, it would be in the lean Democratic category based on that poll, but also based on that Democratic poll, likely Republican starting out in Alaska. Now in the state of Nevada, this is going to be Republican incumbent Joe Lombardo. He is facing off against likely Nevada Attorney General Aaron Ford. The only thing that could mix this race up is if former Governor Steve Sisolak decides to run. The polling thus far shows Lombardo leading over Ford by 21 points in a poll from May of 2023, so we really don't have much polling data to go off of here in what's going to be a pretty competitive race in the state of Nevada. But still, Nevada starts out as safe for the GOP based on that one poll, but again, the results will be much closer. Now we move to the state of Arizona. Arizona, which is expected to be one of the closest governor's races to watch for in 2026. This is going to be Democratic Governor Katie Hobbs will be facing off against either U.S. Representative Andy Biggs or former candidate in 2022 for governor Karen Taylor Robson. Now the polling for this one shows a very close race. The most recent poll from Noble Predictive Insights shows Hobbs leading Biggs by about 2 points, lean Democratic margin, and Hobbs over Karen Taylor Robson by about 2 points, a lean Democratic margin. So with that, Arizona currently starts out in the lean category for the Democrats, a lean Democratic win. So based on the polling map right now of all the polls and the personal predictions for this map, Republicans currently start out with 19 governor seats going their way. Democrats start out with 17, with some very wild ratings out of places like Nevada and Florida essentially being flipped. So that's all I have for you in today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in a future video.